family that immigrated over from England. His father was David Siebel, served in the New York State Legislature and the New York State Assembly, and was a farmer. His great-great-great-grandfather was William Bull. He was an operative stonemason who once built what would become Knox's headquarters during the American Revolution. Now, Hugh Barclay Bull attended the prestigious Montgomery Academy. Comes from a very affluent family. He attends Union College between 1839 and 1841. This is the second oldest college in the state of New York at the time, well, still is, Hamilton College being the oldest. He was one of 80 students, and he was very, very involved academically and socially. So he was a member of the Academic Honor Society, social fraternities, literary groups, and he was even a member of the revered Senate Committee while at Union College. His final year in 1841, he actually welcomed distinguished speaker Benjamin Butler, who would become a major general in the American Civil War and was a governor of Massachusetts. So this goes to show you the kind of men that he is surrounded. So he graduates. Most of his cohorts, they get into divinity, they become pastors, ministers. Some of them get into agriculture, but a vast majority of his classmates become lawyers. So he moves to Goshen, New York, and he studies law under the distinguished Samuel J. Wilkin, who was also a former congressman, 1831 to 1833, studied with him, and eventually passed the New York State Bar, and then in 1847 became the district attorney and then justice of the peace in 1849. He took his pursuits and followed in his father's footsteps and became a New York State Assemblyman in 1852. He was part of the 75th New York State Legislature. Just to kind of give you a feel of what some of the bills that were being supported at the time, which he supported, I highlighted the farmer's fire insurance and the construction of drawbridges. I thought that was very unique, him coming from a farming background, so it was natural for him to vote in the favorable for anything that had to do with agriculture. So he returns back to Goshen. He only serves about 1 to 2 years. He doesn't serve very long, but at this time he returns to fandom, meaning he was very, very popular. He was asked to speak on the history of the village of Montgomery. He spoke before the Orange County Teachers Association. So he is growing very, very popular at this time. 1858, he's secretary of the New York State Agricultural Society, and in 1866, he is the counselor of the Montgomery-Erie Railroad, and then in 1868, he is president of the Orange County Bible Society. Obviously, being surrounded by a lot of affluent men, and given his participation in fraternal organizations at Union College, he decides to become a Freemason. He petitions and becomes a member of Goshen Lodge No. 365. So he was initiated, which is there's 3 degrees of Freemasonry. There's Enter Apprentice, Fellow Craft, and Master Mason. So he becomes an Enter Apprentice June 18th. He becomes a Fellow Craft on July 2nd. And then he's raised to the sublime degree as what we call a Master Mason on July the 16th, 1866. This left a profound impact on him. He's practicing law out of the village of Montgomery, so obviously having to travel to Goshen might have been a little bit of a hindrance for him. So what does he do? He decides to approach the Grand Lodge of the state of New York. Now, Masonry had been in the state of New York since 1781, and there's been, up until this time, several hundred lodges that have formed. So he approaches the Grand Lodge of the state of New York, which is located right down in New York City, and he is given dispensation to open his own lodge on October 10th, 1866. The natural location would be the village of Montgomery, which is where he lived. Nice sprawling hills, Wallkill River, and he decided to name, unlike many lodges, they name their lodges after the town or the village that they're in. Goshen Lodge obviously being one of them. You would think Montgomery Lodge. He chose Wallkill Lodge. He chose Wallkill Lodge for the profound reason, well, the Wallkill River, right? Hundreds and hundreds of job opportunities were employed from the hydropower of the Wallkill River, agriculture, plants, mills, you name it. Without the Wallkill River as the lifeblood of this area, it would probably just be deeply agricultural. A lot of plants were built along, and this is actually right here in Walden, near one of the knife factories. So naturally, he chose Wallkill Lodge. Their first meeting was on December 7th, 1866. This is actually a real picture postcard view of the village of Montgomery. It is still a little bit of a mystery as to where the first lodge building was in Montgomery. I have a hypothesis that it's possibly Ward's Bridge Inn, that being the home, because if you read some of the old meeting minutes, it does mention that it is in a home, which home then transferred into a hotel. At one time it was a hotel, but still a little bit ambiguous as far as where it was. But nevertheless, first meeting was on December 7th, and the first order of business was to compose the leadership. Hugh Barclay Bull would be the master of the lodge. Constant Wadsworth would be the senior warden, which is the senior vice president of the lodge. Robert Young would be the junior warden, or the vice president of the lodge. William J. Welsh would be the secretary, and Henry Hollett would be the senior deacon. Constant Wadsworth was a popular jewelry maker down in the Portland Manor area. Robert Young was from this area. He was a farmer. William J. Welsh was a lawyer, and Henry Hollett, I don't remember his profession, but I know he was a veteran of the Civil War. So the first order of business, aside from appointing leadership, would be adopting the bylaws, which is the tangibles of how the lodge operates. We adopted the bylaws of Goshen Lodge, obviously, naturally, since that's where he came from, but with a few alterations, a few changes. The dues were $3 per year. Now the dues are about $150. The tiler, which is the gentleman who sits on the outside of the door and guards the meetings, if you will, it was paid $1 for his services. Tyler is not paid anymore. And
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Do you know what $3 would have been back then compared to today? Is it about
comparable?
About the same.
About the same. Yep. And then regular communications were held on every Friday evening. We meet the first and third Wednesday of every month. These are just some of the faces of the individuals that came through our halls early on in 1867, one of them being Samuel M. Crawford, also attended Union College, also attended Montgomery Academy, and he was a practicing physician throughout the Wallkill Valley area. Bushrod Millspa, also a practicing physician, came through in 1867. I believe this is his cousin, Thomas Millspa, also a practicing physician in 1867. This is the district deputy. So the district deputy acts as proxy to the Grand Master, which is the one who oversees all the lodges throughout the state. The district deputy only oversees the district, and he represents the Grand Master. And he wrote this about our lodge, our new fledgling lodge. I have visited Wallkill Lodge working under dispensation and found them in possession of the standard work, and being satisfied their aim is the highest, I cordially and cheerfully recommend that a warrant be granted them. This was obviously a big moment of jubilee. And then on June 24th, 1867, we received our charter, and the Grand Master at the time was Stephen H. Johnson. We were issued the number 627. So the lower the number, the older the lodge. So Kingston Lodge, I believe, is number 6 or number 8. So they were formed in the late 1700s. And there was obviously 626 lodges before us. Until 1867. So that's how we received our number. That's a copy of our charter, which is really cool. This is what allows us to open and close and govern our meetings. This is at the head of the lodge, signed by the Grand Master, signed by the master at the time, the wardens. It's got the seal of the Grand Lodge of the state of New York, and I found this to be really cool. And this is why the lecture is titled 1867 to Eternity. On the visitor booklet of men that would visit the lodge, on the very top, the secretary wrote 1867 to Eternity. I thought that was really profound, and hence the title of the lecture. And then in the background, you can see just some vague names. A lot of farmers, a lot of merchants, a lot of lawyers. So all walks of life become Masons. A handful of years later, in 1869, this, believe it or not, is Route 17K. This was actually a photograph taken from a brother of the lodge, William Crabtree, and this was taken in the 1880s. How cool is that? My hypothesis is that's over in the Brick Church Cemetery area, which is apropos, unfortunately, because in 1869 is when our first master passes away to typhoid fever. He expires, if you will, in Port Jervis, New York. This is his obelisk, which is in the Brick Church Cemetery. We actually restored the monument last year, which was a great honor for us to do. It was falling into some disrepair, so we took some D2 solution and cleaned up all the algae. We had about over a dozen brothers. We invited Goshen Lodge to come, seeing as that was his, we call it Mother Lodge. That's where he came from. So it was a great bonding fellowship experience in cleaning his obelisk. So obviously the fraternity continues, but a big occasion was on June 7th, 1878. They removed from the village of Montgomery to Walden. The Grand Master at the time, Edward L. Judson, is the one who approved the transfer, the move, and the reason why. Obviously, I call it the industrial complex of Walden at the time. It was booming. Obviously, the knife factories, commerce, the railroad, everything that you possibly want was in Walden. And people were moving to Walden, which is very apropos to the time as well. So masonry growing right after the Civil War. You've got men yearning for fellowship, for camaraderie. There is no VFW, there is the GAR, but masonry is exploding at this time, and obviously over in the village of Montgomery, we just couldn't fit the needs of the men that were coming through, so the lodge relocated to Walden, New York.
Kyle,
Yes?
what were the qualifications for somebody to become a member?
Read and write. So a lot of people assume that, Masons are like, the Illuminati, like it's upper echelon people, but kind of was back then because, again, there was no middle class. It was the rich and the poor. So, a farmer, most farmers are pretty intellectual. They have to hire people, they have to run staff, but, the ones that are in the field, they may not be able to read and write, and that's a pretty big prerequisite to being a Mason. So you did have a lot of lawyers, a lot of affluent people back then becoming Masons. Today, obviously, it's very leveled out. We always say we meet on the level, right? The high, the low, the rich, the poor, we're all from the same stock, right? The great architect, God. And we don't discriminate. We just have to believe in the immortality of the soul and God.
Are they all men?
They are all men, only men. Yep. Now, there is a female component to that, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. So the venue they chose for their second lodge building was here. This is the Fowler Building. This was a hardware store at the time, and Anson J. Fowler operated his real estate, and he was also a lawyer as well, out of this building as well. The reason why they chose this building, well, the brother of the lodge owned it. Nicholas Jansen Fowler. He owned the Fowler Building. He became a Mason in 1869. He was a treasurer for a long time. He was very, very popular in Walden. President of Walden Savings Bank, president of the Wallkill Valley Electric Company. Obviously, the hardware store was the first hardware store in 1868 in the village of Montgomery. This is his son, Anson J. Fowler, attorney of Walden. Became a Mason in 1900. Followed right in his father's footsteps. Became president of the electric company, and as well as the bank as well. This is a really cool picture. This is actually his home. This was taken out of the historic views of the Wallkill Valley. I love those. That's his home. That's actually him standing right there. This house is still standing. It's on Ulster Ave, right on that main strip as you're going into Walden. This is a really cool story here. So you've got the Ryder Erickson Engine Company. I'm sure most people have seen this. It's over near the Shearley's Car Wash, or was the Shearley's Car Wash. This is where they produced steam engines, which were used in hotels. They were used in colleges and in universities and in private homes if you had money. President Theodore Roosevelt had one of these. So what this would do is you would burn a little fire on the bottom here. That heat would expand, and this little belt would pull water or whatever from the ground, and that is how you had running water. And that was invented due in large part to Ryder and Erickson. Now, I'll talk a little bit about Ryder. He became a Mason of our lodge, but this was a doodle sheet that was shared with me from Mariella Matisse, the historian of the village of Montgomery, and I just love it. You see some of these Masonic symbols on here. He writes on here, holiness to the Lord, and all these unique little features, which I thought was really cool. This is Alexander Kirk Ryder. A record is better than a promise. That was his motto. Became a Mason in 1874. He obtained over 35 patents in his lifetime. He invented the cut-off valve system, which was used in the USS Monitor during the Civil War. The Monitor and the Merrimack. That's really cool information. Naturally, father-son. The son also becomes a Mason in 1875. They all came from the Delamere Iron Works, which was out of New York City, and then they came up and then opened up several locations in Chicago, Boston, and in Walden, of all places. It's pretty cool because the father was the brains, came up with the inventions, and his son would be the one that would draw the blueprints. So really cool relationship, I'm sure they had. This brings you to this esteemed home. Does anybody know where this is?
Right on 208, headed out of the village there on the left.
Most popular man in Walden's house. Who is it?
Colonel Bradley.
Colonel Bradley. Thomas Wilson Bradley. He was a Medal of Honor recipient in the Civil War. So he earned his Medal of Honor at the Battle of Chancellorsville with the 124th New York Company H, which are from Walden. The colonel rides up. The men are running out of ammunition. He needs a volunteer. Young Thomas W. Bradley, 18 years old at the time, hands over his musket, his haversack, and he runs between the line of fire to an ammo crate between he and the enemy. He procures the ammo crate, doesn't turn his back to the enemy. The Confederates at this time are in awe of this of what he was doing. A lot of the officers told their men to cease fire. Then, of course, they resumed firing once he started stirring back the line. Nevertheless, that deed is what earned him the Congressional Medal of Honor many years later after the Civil War. He became a Mason in 1871, and as we all know, he was president of the New York Knife Company. Here's Thomas Wilson Bradley, from Yorkshire, England, United States Congressman, Assemblyman, president of the bank, New York Knife Company. I mean, you name it. This guy was the mayor without being the mayor of Walden.
Do you know the year that house was built?
I don't.
Is it still standing?
It is
Oh, yeah.
standing. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
not past it.
In good shape.
In good shape.
So these are the knife factories. This was the lifeblood of the economy in Walden. Was the knife? It was known as Knife Town, or the Sheffield of the West. So Sheffield, England. Many of the families unhappy with how things were being operated over there, moved to Connecticut. Worked in Connecticut at some knife factories. They were unhappy with how things were going there. They decided to open up their own practice. Moved to Matawan, which is Beacon, New York, and used the Matawan Creek as power to sharpen the blades, and they realized we need more power. So they relocate one final time to Walden, and then before you know it, every knife maker is like, we're going to Walden. And you've got the Walden Knife Factory, you've got this is over where the Stewarts is, in the village of Montgomery, or village of Walden. And this one here is obviously, there's Highbridge. This is opposite, I think, is it a real estate? But this is obviously no longer there. This is where the Thruway Market is. This is the Walden Knife Company. I just love the photographs of the interior here. That's what these blue-collar men did. And women worked in the factories as well. Obviously, maybe not so much in the hands-on manual labor, but they did a lot of the bookkeeping and the packaging and the selling. And this was a way of life in Walden. This was another photograph that was shared to me by the Historical Society of Walden. I saw it, I immediately recognized a brother of our lodge, which is this gentleman here, Edward Whitehead. He was the president of the Walden Knife Company. This is Edward Whitehead. His little write-up about him is his success in life may, in brief, be attributed to perseverance, energy, keenness of judgment, and constant devotion to an industry that has become one of the most important in Orange County. He became a Mason in 1900 and he was very, very popular and very wealthy as well from the Walden area. That brings us down to this area here, which is the Worcester Manufacturing Company, which was owned and operated by Brother Hiram B. Worcester. This is a cool
Is
little...
that off North 52? That's
Yes,
still
it is.
there, isn't it?
So this is, I could be wrong, but I think it's over where the Oddfellow building is and where Brian Marr's assembly office is. It's down that road, and I think it would have been right there. Although there were a lot of buildings that looked like this at the time, so it's kind of hard to know, unless somebody knows definitively. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe it's down that side road, or would have been down that side road.
Yeah, because there's a building that looks just like
exactly
that.
like that.
Which is why I think
Going
it's
down
down the
52.
road, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, different
Yeah.
spot.
And so he sold garments, and I believe, I could be wrong, but I was told that there were, at this time, only 3 coverall manufacturing plants, if you will, in the country. Walden was one of them, and he operated this one here at Walden. Here's Hiram B. Worcester, became Mason in 1900 as well. Was very involved in the Walden Savings Bank. and it's not on here, but he was very instrumental in the Wallkill Valley Cemetery. He was like one of the first trustees over there. So, our Masonic Lodge relocates one final time. I absolutely adore this photograph. It's in my collection. This is obviously our Masonic Temple right here on Main Street. You can see the really neat ornate roof. This is the Eagle Hotel. Just such a beautiful photograph. But yes, we relocated one last time. Again, so we had heating issues, and I don't know how they got like a potbelly stove kind of thing up all those 3-4 feet, stories to the top floor of the Fowler building. I mean, you read the meeting minutes, and they were constantly freezing their tail off, and it was a tight space. And with masonry continuing to grow, they relocated one final time to Main Street. At the time, we had about 100 masons. We had a huge party. It was a Masonic promenade. So on May the 2nd, the day before our first meeting, in our new venue or new building, we had a huge party on the top floor, our 3rd floor. So they had a concert. It was 50 cents for a ticket, and so it was really, really neat. So backstory on how we obtained this building. John C. Schofield was a big-time, I don't want to say railroad tycoon, but he was very attached. He was one of the directors of the Montgomery Erie Railroad, Montgomery Erie Railroad. So when he passed away, his widow had inherited, I want to say like about $600,000, $700,000, which today is like $2 million. Yeah, so a lot of money. So in his last will and testimony was to build our Masonic Hall. And it's really cool because obviously we didn't have a lot of money at the time. So she rented an office on the 2nd floor. Thomas Wilson Bradley rented an office on the 2nd floor. And then I want to say in about the 1820s or 30s, we officially bought the building and became our Masonic Hall. But we had a lot of support and help before we actually owned the building, if you will. So I did a little bit of research from 1866 to 1918. Believe it or not, this took me hours to do, and I stopped at 1918. Eventually, I'll continue. I wanted to see what kinds of men were coming through our halls. Obviously, vast majority being in the agricultural field, farmers. We got a lot of merchants. Cutlers, I thought, would have been a little bit higher. A lot in the railroad. A lot of ministers, which is really cool. You had a lot of traveling ministers, and they would become members of the lodge, and they would be our chaplain. So in our meetings, we do open the Holy Bible in the lodge room, and there is prayer that is done by, could be a chaplain or not a chaplain. Back then, it was most of the time a chaplain, which was really neat.
Kyle?
Yes.
So cutlers, what, the people who worked in the knife factory?
Knife factories.
Okay, so cutlers are people who they know.
Correct. Yep. So on the membership rolls, you'll see like blade finisher. You know they're in the knife factory. You'll see cutler. You'll see knife company. There's like a lot of different occupations that they would write on there. I just kind of compile them all under cutlers. So they would be in the knife factories. That brings us to the home of the condensed milk, right? The Borden factory. Now, Gail Borden, I don't believe, was a Mason. Gail Borden's father, John G. Borden, was a Mason, but not a Wallkill Lodge. I was like, ugh, because that would have been really neat. He was an Oddfellow in Walden at the Oddfellows building, which is now the VFW, which I believe has sold. Regardless, his son became a Mason. What I thought was really cool is on the membership roll, it said his occupation was gentleman. And I was like, well, we know he's working for his father, and it's a family-run business, but under his occupation, he wrote gentleman. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
I'm gonna start putting that down.
Yeah.
I like that one.
So he joins our fraternity in 1893, and really neat story. His sister, Marion Borden, when she passed away, she bequeathed the entire estate to the New York State Masonic Home and Asylum Fund. Now, there is one more site, and that's up in Utica, New York. So my interpretation is the one up in Utica, New York was going to help the destitute widows, orphans, and men up in the northern area of New York, and then the Borden estate would be for the downstate Masons that needed help, aid, and assistance. Unfortunately, the Great Depression ruined all of that, and the Grand Lodge and State of New York sold it to pay off debts. But that would have been really neat if that had continued. And it would have just changed the entire scope of the area, too. This brings me to a really, really neat story, so I will try my best not to be long-winded. But this was too cool not to share. Brother Willis C. Stevens, in 1901, goes missing in Walden, New York. Now, he works for the National Bank in Walden, and he goes missing. So his wife last seen him for breakfast. He's like, sweetie, I got to go down to Newburgh. I got some business to do. He hops on a trolley. He goes down to the city of Newburgh. He's seen at one of the hotels there. He buys a cigar. He tells the ticket person over there, when's the last train? Well, here's the last train that time. And then before you know it, he's gone. So the ticket holder was like, I never saw him. And no one ever saw me. I never returned home. So this caused enormous panic in Walden. It became national news panic. Thomas Wilson Bradley, obviously, quote-unquote, mayor of New York at the time, sounds the alarm. You've got Masons far and wide, especially from Wallkill Lodge, that are on horse and carriage. They're riding with their lanterns. They're riding up Holster Avenue to Bradley's home for consultation. What do? We have a brother that's missing. So one of the things that Bradley does is he creates a missing brother poster, which was posted in all of the lodges. I've contacted some of the other lodges to see if they had it posted. We don't. It made its way into the newspapers, and then Bradley, being Bradley, hires the Pinkerton Detective Agency to find him. Talk about money. And meanwhile, this is a fraternity. This is a volunteer organization. Granted, he did have business workings with him at the bank, as did Bradley, but he was willing to go and move mountains to find our dear brother. Hires the Pinkertons. I'm like, this is neat. So the Pinkertons, they go down to City Newburgh. This is Water Street. This is about the area where he went missing. This is a beautiful photograph if you haven't seen it before. They go down there. They interview a bunch of people. He was last seen at the United States Hotel, which is where that last trolley car ended. And no luck. He's still missing. They hired the police there. They couldn't find him. So, being stumped, Bradley decides to hire the Schroeder's dive team to, they called it, drag the Hudson River to find his body. They thought he drowned. They thought maybe he got inebriated or something and then drowned in the Hudson. So could you imagine? He hires the Pinkertons, hires the scuba divers, and still they don't find him. Long story short, he was experiencing, he must have probably been on some medication or something like that. He was going AWOL. So he checked himself into an insane asylum in Philadelphia. Why Philadelphia, I don't know. But there were some newspaper articles that I read where people were like, I saw him here, which was in Philly, and he did check himself into an insane asylum. He makes his way back on the train. Bradley, at this point, is happy, but also probably very upset. But one of the cool parts of the article, I should have put it up here, is Bradley, being a very high society man, he owns a business, probably a multimillionaire to today's terms of money, senator, congressman, all these things, Medal of Honor recipient. He picks them up with his private horse and carriage and rides with them all through town, and people are now noticing him. So talk about meeting on a level, right? Would you see somebody do that today? I don't know. But I thought that was a cool story. I had to share it. This brings you to some really neat photographs from our collection from 1918 to the 1920s. This is the oldest photograph in our collection. It is dated 1918. I actually paid to have this colorized before AI became a thing, which is hilarious. I was able to identify all these men. Most of them worked in the knife factories. A good percentage of them also served our country during World War I. The knife. Men that have become district deputy grandmasters. Again, a district deputy is proxy to the grandmaster, which is the number one mason in the state of New York. And his job is to govern and oversee all the lodges in the district. So he was our very first. I felt apropos to feature him. In 1914 is when he became district deputy. He went to Syracuse University, practiced law. Very, very popular man. He's all over in the newspapers if you look him up. That's his apron there. And he was district attorney. Another cool postcard view here of our. I collect Walden specifically because I love just collecting the old views of our Masonic Hall. You can see here how it's sort of changing over time. You've got the St. Nicholas Hotel over here. So we had a lot of dinners here. And this was just a hopping spot right here on the Main Street. So you're talking about Masonry being a male-only, right, fraternity, Eastern Star is women-only, so they meet in our Masonic Hall. This is an actual photograph of, we call them sisters, right? Masons call each other brothers. They call each other sisters. And then it's the same picture with William Wilder. And Joseph W. Rowland was a big figure also in Walden, New York. He was superintendent of the New York Knife Company. And this is a great story. This is Minnie Cole Mills. She was the worthy matron, which is like the president of the Eastern Star chapter. Her daughter donated this photograph, the non-colorized version, obviously, to the lodge. And I told her that I would make that a point to share it with you all. All right. So these are photographs that are hung in our Masonic Hall.
Did I say something?
No, just saying hello.
Hi.
So you've got Ray Wold Nichols. He was a past master of our lodge. He worked at Vassar College. You've got Henry Wiley. He was big in Walden. He was a chief of the fire department. He was justice of the peace. Very, very popular. He was like a 50-year Mason of our lodge. Harry Tilson was also a long-standing secretary of our lodge. McGowan owned a dry goods store, I believe, in Walden.
Oh yeah, where the town hall
Yeah.
was.
And then Benedict, I believe, was Knife Factory. The others I have not been able to ID yet. That brings you to the 1930s. I just love these old views. You can see our Masonic Hall right here. What a time to be alive, right? What a time to be alive. So I was mentioning district deputy overseeing the district. This is what a district looks like. So there's our lodge. This has changed dramatically since today. We're down to 12 lodges in our district. It's probably over, maybe close to that there. But regardless, you've got 7,500 men that became Masons in just the Orange and Rockland district alone. Today, we have about 8,000 in the entire state.
Yeah.
See, that goes to show how, everybody practically became a Mason some way, shape, or form.
And especially when you look at the population now compared to then.
Yeah.
You look at those
Yeah.
numbers, it's percentage-wise, it's
Yeah.
way different.
Yeah, but I just love, you've got Hoffman Lodge. They have a beautiful Masonic Hall in Middletown. They have over 1,000 men. That place is, if you ever get a chance to get a tour of that place is beautiful. Another fellowship photograph. This is actually 1936, one of our clam bakes. I was able to ID some of these men here. Cliff Medley. Medleys are very popular name in Walden. Herbert McHugh, which I just learned, his father was
Funeral director was,
I was going to say superintendent.
Oh,
Town supervisor, my goodness. He was a town supervisor. He was a postal office worker. Birch, he comes from the big Birch family in Walden. I think he worked at the bank.
What's his name?
Which one? William E. Booth?
Oh, Booth was a cutler, I think.
Was it?
One of the Booths. I don't know if it was that Booth, but.
This takes us to the 1936 photograph here.
You had Hinchcliffe in there. Somebody was talking about them last night.
Boom.
Lewis Hinchcliffe.
Funny, I read an article recently about Harold Miller. He's from the Midwest. He's from Ohio. He came over specifically to work in the telephone company. And everybody said he was one of the most brilliant minds in the area. I was like, that's cool. That's cool to hear. Yeah.
Oh, so there's two Hinchcliffes.
Yeah, Hinchcliffe brothers, yeah.
Because somebody was talking last night, he said when he was a kid, so now he's like 70, when he was a kid, he was talking to old man Hinchcliffe who was like about 90. So I don't know if it's either one of those or maybe a father or something like that.
So this brings us to the 1940s, and again, another cool view of our Masonic Hall. And that brings us into another really cool story. So James A. Jonas, he was our master during the height of World War II, at least for the American involvement. He was a well-to-do man, president of the fiber distribution firm, Orange County Chamber of Commerce president, and right before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the governor of New York, last name is Lehman, I forget his first name, he was a Freemason, appointed James A. Jonas because he knew all the businesses, he knew the area really well. He tapped him on the shoulder and said, I want you to chair the Orange County Defense Council. So with the Battle of Britain raging, the ever-looming fear that we could get attacked on the home front. And if it's happening in England, it's bound to happen here. So James A. Jonas heads the Orange County Defense Council, and this is everything on the volunteer front. So, everything from air raid preparation, reading radar, emergency response when it comes to putting out fires, because obviously firefighters that are employed at a time, they're going to get stressed with the amount of homes and businesses and everything in flames. So there was a volunteer sector there. There was nurses on the volunteer sector. So this was a huge thing, huge rallying cry in Orange County right before the attack on Pearl Harbor. And the master of the lodge was tapped to chair it, which is really neat. So I found some really cool articles here. So October 10th, 1941, he's running the relay system. This is a really cool story. So in our lodge room on the second floor, he had shown to the defense committee, to Wallkill Lodge, and to the public a 40-minute sound film of an actual air raid in England showing their civilian response teams and what he's hoping to build here in Orange County. This was in the newspaper. This is actually right after Pearl Harbor. This is on December 9th. So you've got him, Jonas, here now. Perhaps I can interest you in joining the Defense Council. I need you, right?
Yeah. Kyle, they had the lookouts on tops of the buildings.
Oh, they
On
did?
top of the Fowler building, they had a lookout.
Oh,
That
that's
was
what that is?
And they kind of
For,
rebuilt it now.
The gauge of the airplane?
And they had another one somewhere else too.
So at one time we had 15,000 volunteers in Orange County that volunteered for the Orange County Defense Council, which I thought was really cool. It's a cool quote I found of him. So in war today, we have a problem different from that of any other. Belligerents may attack the Army and the Navy, or they will intensify the attack on the home people. We must keep civilian morale high to keep up the Army morale. And that's what he said in the newspaper. That's his apron there. Now, cool thing, I found the 40-minute sound clip that he had. I'm not going to do 40 minutes, I promise. But I had to show at least a minute or so.
Was that the Brooklyn Bridge that you
Yeah,
had?
that was,
Yes.
what a
I
building.
don't know how to turn the volume up. This is what was shown in our lodge room about 90 years ago. I mean, actually, it's really cool. When you walk up there and see this.
That's the Brits. You can see they're driving on that.
You just couldn't imagine the fear, right? That's the first thing that I think of. Now, you're seeing this in the lodge room. You know the world's at war. And they wouldn't create something if they didn't think you were going to get attacked. So I couldn't imagine what that aura must have been in the room when this was shown. Because they're seeing what it's like over in England.
Well, there were U-boats right off the coast here, so,
Yeah, the thought was they were going to attack New York City.
yeah, it wasn't inconceivable.
So this is a civilian vehicle that's pulling all sorts of fire hoses. This was what the civilian sector would have been doing if we were getting bombed.
Yeah.
How cool is that? So I just had to show that little clip there. So we celebrated our 75th anniversary in 1942, and it was in the Dutch Reformed Church. And here's Jonas there. There's the Grand Master at the time here. It made its way into the newspaper, which I had to read. So, Most Worshipful William F. Strang of Rochester, State Grand Master, asks the people were going back to churches and to masonry after 2 decades of drifting between wars. Masonry stands for religion, freedom, tolerance, and the spirit of brotherhood, he declared. Our enemies don't stand for any of those things, but seek to destroy them. In all our previous wars, defeat would not have meant total loss of all our freedoms and ideals, but they are doomed if we lose this war. Wow, you just can imagine what that must have felt like in the room to hear that. Another photograph too in our collection here. So you've got the Lustig family. So the Lustigs, we have their actual 50-year medal, which is in our collection, which is really neat. And unfortunately, he passed away. Carl Lustig passed away before he was to receive it. So this is his son accepting it on his behalf.
That's great.
Yeah.
Up there in the corner.
How old's that photograph?
1942.
How do they live, you said it's an apron?
It's an
Oh, it
apron.
has to be a car, that has to be.
Like you tie it
Car.
back?
So some of them are tied and some of them have like a clip.
Oh, okay.
So this is a cool story here, but I'm actually writing a paper on this gentleman. He was a captain in the Army, and he was also a lawyer. And he actually wrote letters to the lodge. Bob, you would love this. And I was like, this has got to be an epic paper. I'll probably do a presentation on that later. He's writing to the lodge about what he's seeing overseas. I thought that was really cool.
Who was it? Who is it?
Embler.
Oh, okay.
He's,
Was he
from
the
the
attorney?
Embler family.
Embler was, one was an attorney, right?
Yep, his father. Albert, I think it's Albert Embler.
Yeah, I think so.
This is another cool photograph, 1950s and 60s. That's 1952, some of our officers, 1957. This is one of my favorite photographs. It's got Herbert McHugh in there. It's got William Cox. And he was the
Holy cow.
thank you, principal of the middle school. Norman Shapiro was mayor of Maybrook
Yeah, but he
and also a
was
lawyer.
a lawyer.
Yeah, also a lawyer. Richard Lockwood, I know, served in World War II. I just forget what he did as an occupation. We already spoke about Herbert McHugh, the post office. But I like this photograph because you've got three of our, we call them purple, which were past district deputy grand masters, all in one photograph. Again, we only have 5 in our lodge's history. We've got 3 in here. The one excluded is Robert T. Hume. So Port Jervis Lodge, number 328, actually merged with Wallkill on June 7, 2021. Too many bills, right? Membership falling, and instead of turning their charter in and losing everything, they merged with us on June 7th, 2021. Their first master was Worshipful Alfred Barkley. He was a millwright by trade. He's actually from Walden, but moved to Port Jervis. He's actually related to Hugh Barkley Bull. I'm like, how of all lodges they choose to merge with, they chose to merge with us, and he's first masters of both lodges related. I was like, how cool is that?
It is.
How
And-
far is Port Jervis
From Walden?
35 miles.
30 some odd miles.
34,
So they-
35.
They had like, I want to say 6 or 7 lodge buildings. They hopped from place to place in Port Jervis, but this was probably the more eloquent building that they were in, and this was the Farman building. And obviously the one who owned it was also Freemason Farman. But that would have been really neat. I don't know if it still stands today. So that brings us to the present day, right? 2025. So our masters served 1-year terms. I was the master last year. Our master this year is John Conklin. He is a retired police officer from the village of Walden. That's him right there.
Where are you?
I am over here. I am an assistant secretary this year. We've got Bob Agazi right here, a past master of our lodge. He's actually seated right there in the back of the room. Yeah, so every office, every apron has a unique responsibility in leading the lodge, whether it's the finances, whether it's committees, whether it's education. Everybody has a unique role and responsibility. Now, we are very active in the community. I did mention we did the Hugh Barkley Bowl stone cleaning workshop my year as master. This year we cleaned Bradley Stone. We do need to go back and do a little bit more work. But that was a really fun experience. Mary Ellen
That
spoke
was great.
there on it as the historian, where we do the Walden Harvest Festival every year. We actually built the barbecue pit at James Ollie Park. We built benches for suicide prevention awareness at James Ollie Park. We have a plaque on there. If you're in need and you need someone to call, it's a safe place to be. We donated $4,000 this year to the Montgomery Food Pantry, which is huge. It's a record amount of money that we donated. That's like double, Bob, right? For the pantry, it's almost like, what, 8,000?
Yeah. Right now, the latest thing is they pay 16 cents a pound for food. So you can imagine how far $4,000 would go at 16 cents a pound.
Yeah, so
They changed the formula.
100% of our monies earned at the chicken barbecue, we donate right back to, we don't take a lick of any money. It goes right to the food pantry. And then we did the food bank this year, which was really cool. We did that for Thanksgiving. That's us on the far left there. Packing turkeys for those in need. We've got a couple of our staple events. I'll get into those in just a second. We also do Hogan's Heroes, which goes to breast cancer, someone fighting breast cancer. So we donated $1,000. This is when we had our open house last year, which was great. We did a tour of our Masonic Hall. We did, brief introduction on what is Freemasonry, so the public knows who we are. And then we went to a really neat historical lecture, which is the presentation you're seeing today. We'll probably do another one in 2027 for our big 160th anniversary. Of course, we do the parades. We do the Walden and the General Montgomery Day Parade. General Richard Montgomery was a Freemason, which is a little cool plug of history there. So when he was serving in the British Army, he was a Freemason of Unity Lodge out of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Went back to England, resigned his commission. He's like, I'm out of here. Comes back to America. War breaks out. And he's like, I'm not. None of those redcoats anymore. But so we did the General Montgomery Day Parade. These are the two heartfelt ones that we really value is the Breakfast with Santa. We sponsor low-income families from the area. We provide food, breakfast, non-perishable food items they take home, and we provide a Christmas experience for families that would otherwise not have it, unfortunately. So that's a really, really fun and heartwarming endeavor that we do. And of course, we honor our first responders. And then we're almost done here. Just to encapsulate our lodge's history, we're almost at 160. We've had 142 worshipful masters, which are the presidents of the lodge, 5 district deputy grand masters. We had 6 staff officers, 3 grand representatives, and 5 assistant grand lecturers. We currently have, this fluctuates from time to time, 133 master masons. And this Saturday we will be raising what we call to the 3rd degree 5 brothers. So we are growing. We had 4 last year. We have 5 this year. We've got over a dozen candidates this year, but we try to keep it within the 5 to 6 range. We do have a pipeline that they go through, interview phase, background check. They have to write a paper. So becoming a Mason isn't just handing out a petition. It's a laborious endeavor because we want men to stay, right? And if they're going to fight for it and really want it, then they're going to stay, right? And because it's a lifelong commitment, right? We're not a fly-by-night organization. We've survived Great Depressions, wars. We've survived it all because of the abdominal will of the men that are in our fraternity. And then I just have a fun little video, just some of the faces of the men, and this will close us out. So the men in our lodge. You might recognize some of them. Will Spofford Funeral Home.
That's got her son, isn't it? Oh, is that the guy from Ohio?
He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. That's Emler,
Yeah.
Captain of World War II.
Mhm.
The other one was Department of Corrections. I can name what all these men do. I love our history. He's from New Paltz. I think he was a professor. There's Albert Emler right there.
Uh-huh.
He was a chaplain and he was a pastor at the large church that is now the Islamic Temple.
Is the
There's
women,
Wiley there.
is the women's organization still going?
It
Or
is.
is it?
Yeah.
And there's 2 youth groups.
Do you still have the Rainbow Girls? Your mother was a Rainbow Girl.
We did. Now we don't, but it looks like they're coming back. Which is we have Demo Lay and the Rainbow, which is for girls and boys, almost like a Boy Scout, Girl Scout kind of thing, but Masonic in nature. And that's it.
Thank you so much.
1 hour.
There are a lot of organizations like Knights of Pythias, Rotary, Kiwanis. Did some men join like a number of these?
Oh, yeah.
Or did they